All right, we're talking week 7, set 1, SWYK 1 notes here. And we're going to zoom in here, take a look at what we've got today. Well, we're starting with a parabola, right? But it's in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. So we know that a is 1. Obviously, that means we are opening up, right? Because it's a positive. And then we can use the information that we have to find. And as I've told you before, we want to find the axis of symmetry first. That is step number 1. Find that axis of symmetry first. We're using the opposite of b over 2a. So that would be the opposite of 8 over 2 times 1, which gives me -4. So we know that x equals -4. Obviously, you don't have to do the x equals part because it's already written there. You would just type -4 in there for the value. Now, since we know it opens up, we know that it has a basic shape to it, kind of like the one I'm drawing over here at negative. Oh, how did I find the vertex? Should have said that first, right? So once we knew that this information went here, then we say to ourselves, how do I find the y value that goes with it? Plug it into the equation. So we go back here and plug all the x's with a -4. And when we figure that out, 16 minus 32 plus 17, we get 1. So we know the y value of the vertex is 1. So I've drawn a quick little picture, just a sketch. We know it opens up. So we definitely have a minimum value. Remember that anything that we say that's a minimum or a maximum is the y value. Now, we might have to declare in the problem at what x value. Some of these questions ask you for the x value where it's occurring, but some of them do not. So for instance, this one says you choose the word minimum, so you'd actually fill that in. Minimum value is 1, and then you put in the number 1 in. That comes from the y value of the vertex. Now if you see the picture, and remember the idea of pushing all the values onto the y-axis forever and ever and ever, and then asking yourself how much of the y-axis would get covered, it would be everything from 1 on up to positive infinity. So we can say that as an inequality, because they're asking for an inequality, y is greater than or equal to 1. Next question. So very similar types format to start with. As I told you before, find the axis of symmetry first. We've got our a and our b and our c. We notice that the a value is negative, so we know it opens down. Then we can use that information, the a and the b, right? Opposite of b over 2 times a, and we end up with +1. So we know that goes there and also here. And we can use that information in the equation, replacing all the x's with 1s. Notice that I'm using parentheses. It's really important, especially in that lead term, that you use parentheses. Not so much with positives, but definitely with negatives, because kids that forget those to use those parentheses with negatives in their calculator end up getting the wrong value, and that messes everything up. So make sure you do that, and you'll end up with, in this case, -2, which can then be found there. So we found the one, -2, and we know that it opens down. That means that this has to be a max. Right? A maximum y value at -2. Now in the next part of this next question, you'll see that, obviously you're going to choose one of these. Obviously you choose that. And that's where basically they're looking at that. And then of course after that, you put in the y value at -2. But in the next part with the range, it doesn't ask me to actually put in, they have the y part right there. We can see that it is less than or equal to. And so that's what you're going to choose right there. You're going to choose that. And then you're going to have to put the number in, which is, in this case, that maximum y value of -2. Okay, moving on. Where is my recorder? Okay, so on question 3, we see that we have an a value of 1, a b value of 7, a c value of -3. And they're asking us to write this in vertex form. A big clue to you is that the a value does not change. We already know that the a value is a 1. That's not what we really need to figure out here. What we really need to figure out is what the heck's h and k? The vertex. We need to know what that vertex is so that we can write it in the correct form. Well, So we're going to use the handy-dandy opposite of b over 2a thing we've been using. And when we do that, the opposite of 7 over 2 times 1, we get negative 3.5. Okay, so that's your h value. Now remember, when you put it inside the parentheses, we said it always looks backwards, right? Because it's really x minus h. Well, if h is already a negative number, it looks like a plus. Then how do I find the other part that goes with it? That's when we plug that number into the equation and for both of the x's, and when we do that, we come up with negative 15 and a quarter. Now, the way I've written it over here on the left side is correct, with the negative 15 and a quarter on the outside. But a lot of times, you will see it written like this. Now, it's the same exact thing. It's just that people don't write the 1 out in front of it. Does it hurt if you do? No. Math Excel should not count you off for that, because that is not wrong at all. That is correct. On the remaining questions of this, they're asking about maximums and minimums. Okay, so you've got a parabola. We know that this thing opens down because the a value is a negative number. Okay, so there is a maximum at the top where that vertex is at. So we can do the whole opposite of b over 2 times a. But what we're finding, since the p value is your x, the price is your x value, then the first number that you find with your axis of symmetry formula, opposite of b over 2a, is actually the price at which you're going to sell the most. And I can go into the psychology of why that's true, because if you sell it for less money, then you'll make less money. If you sell it for more money, you'll make less money. Sometimes people think things are too cheap or too expensive, and they're not going to buy it. But there is a sweet spot in the middle that will cause the most or the maximum revenue to be sold. And once I plug that in, I find out that the revenue is $30,250. So we have that price and this revenue. Okay, on the next question, hold on. This is going to be another one where I have a hard time keeping it within 7 minutes because I already broke that rule. Anyway, so if you take a look at this, on this next question, write the equation of the parabola in vertex form. You've been given the vertex, so that's not the hard part. Finding the a value is the hard part. What you'll notice is that I took not only the other coordinate that was on the graph, the 2, negative 4, but also the hk, and I plugged them both in, right? So the hk got plugged in, then I plugged in the 2, negative 4 for x and y. And I show you my algebra here. Move the constant over to the other side before you start simplifying this part. And that gives me a equals negative 7, right? Because 2 minus 3, quantity squared, is all positive 1. You get negative 1, and then when you square it, you get positive 1. So anyway, so we get an a value of negative 7, and we know what to put up there. Question 6 is a little more difficult. Not terribly difficult. It's more algebra than anything else. More of your Algebra 1 days. Write an equation in standard form. Oh, standard form like y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Right, like that. Of the parabola that has the same shape. So it's got to have either a positive 4 for a or a negative 4 for a. One of those two. How do I know which one it's going to be? Well, they tell me that the maximum is 5, and it occurs at an x value of negative 6. They just told me the vertex, right? And since it's a maximum, I know that this thing opens down. That forces the a value to be negative 4. So now I know that. I know the vertex. So you'll see that I started out in vertex form. That was the easiest thing. And if they had asked me to write it in vertex form, I'd be done with this question. But they decided to ask about it in standard form. So we got to follow our order of operations. Got to square that first. That means x plus 6 times x plus 6. I'm a big fan of the box. If you're not, you can draw all the arrows you want. If you want to do the first, outsides, insides, lasts. You know, first, outsides, insides, lasts. I know that's a review from Algebra 1, but I'll just show you the way I do it with the box because it helps me keep things focused. Once again, if you don't like the box, don't use it. Use what makes sense to you. So I put my box underneath one of these so that those become the headings of the columns. And then I take the other one and I slide it down the side so it becomes the headings of the rows. And then I just start matching things up, like x times x is x squared. And then, just continuing to go across that top row. 6 times x is 6x. Bottom left, 6 times x is 6x. And then bottom right, 6 times 6 is 36. And then I combine my like terms. You can see what I did right there. X squared plus 12x plus 36. Next on our list is distributing, right? We're going to distribute all the way through here, and that's how we ended up with this part right here. But then you can't forget about the -5 because it's a like term with the -144, which means you end up with this as your final answer. Sorry for making this video long. Bye.